Greetings, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy Fat Tuesday. Happy Mardi Gras. Yes, let the good times roll. So I'm wearing some green. I've got some purple on someplace else. I'll have on some beads later. I'm originally from Texas, and we celebrate Mardi Gras in my hometown of Galveston. It's sometimes bigger celebrations on the weekend of than in New Orleans. So that's going on today, but our subject is not really a good times roll subject. I used to do this seminar every year, and I also on television, on Roland Martin's show, on News One Now, and on a number of other programs, I did this segment called Know Your Rights and Stay Alive. And frankly, I stopped doing it because everything that I was teaching with all of my decades of experience as an attorney, finishing law school, working as a public defender, working in the civil department, defending cities and police departments, and all of my best advice, there were still examples of people ending up assaulted, battered, falsely arrested, killed by police when they were doing all of the things that I was saying to do. And so I didn't want to not do a segment on it for this show. And for those of you who are here for the first time, this is Make It Make Sense with Monique Pressley. I'm your host, and we try to dial down the noise, the rhetoric, the bickering, and bring you the facts, the truth, data-driven, fact-driven, and when it's commentary, it's based on facts and data. But I couldn't make it make sense by myself because I know that the things that I know you have a right to do isn't the same as what you necessarily should do when you are encountering the police. So when I was talking this over and wanting to do the segment with my producer, what I asked was, let's bring in a pro. Let's bring in an expert who knows the right and the wrong of it, is experienced in law enforcement, but is also experienced in matters of criminal justice and social justice. And we have the perfect person for that. I am pleased that we have today a retired, she is former, but also retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant Dorsey spent decades on patrol in the Los Angeles Police Department and has been even in a really famous gang unit there. I'm going to let her tell you whatever it is she feels free to tell you about that. But she also, you can see her, you've seen her probably on CNN and elsewhere giving her expert commentary about matters of consequence and hot cases that are going on in the legal system that have to do with law enforcement. She is the author of The Confidence Chronicles, The Greatest Crime Story Never Told. I'm going to show you that book. This is hers, Confidence Chronicle, The Greatest Crime Story Never Told. So please, I know you'll want to get that as soon as we are done here. And even though she could be anywhere in the world, she's with us today. So you know what? Thank you so much just for doing this. I know you're in high demand because you're an expert. And unfortunately, we need you more and more and more. If you heard what I said at the introduction, and if you look at my pinned tweet, I've added a question mark at the end of what used to be what I thought was solid ground about how people should know their rights and stay alive when in encounters with police officers. But more and more, we've seen people being shot in the back when they were not under arrest, when they should have been free to leave. We've seen people, as you know, being shot in their vehicles when they were driving off and could have been found when the officer claims it was a taser instead of a gun. We've seen people being taken on what we call rough rides and ending up dead. We've seen people who are stopped on foot and then for whatever reason are being run down and chased when it doesn't even look like there was a reasonable articulable suspicion for them to be stopped in the first place. So you know, I know what the law is, but the difference between what our rights are and what we have to do on these streets to stay alive, to live, to call a lawyer, to live, to talk to our family and see another day. I don't have anything, Sergeant Dorsey. I really don't. So that's why that's why for today you are it for us. And if before I've got some scenarios that I kind of want to pose to you and figure out so we can tell people what the right and the wrong of it is and what the should and the should not of it is. But if you want to share anything with us so they'll know something about your background before we start, then please do.
Okay, well, let me start off by saying, and I know that you spoke to this in your intro, I'm a retired 20-year veteran of the Los Angeles Police Department. I spent all 20 years working patrol. So it's not like the information I'm going to be giving you is something that somebody just handed to me on a piece of paper and says, say this. I'm going to tell you what I know for real, and what I think will help keep you safe, because that's the goal. The goal is to survive the police encounter. And, you know, I'm a mother of 4 young Black men. And so I get both sides of the equation. And I'm going to say to everyone that's listening today, exactly what I say to my sons. I need you to come home.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to prove right then and there. Don't hold court curbside, because you will lose each and every time. You will find yourself the victim of what I like to refer to as contempt of cop. You piss one of them off, there's a price to pay. Yeah. And sometimes that price could be something as simple as an inconvenience. You get a ticket, you're going to be out of a little bit of money. They're going to tow your car. They might take you to jail on a Friday, knowing you don't have the financial wherewithal to bail out, and you spend all weekend in jail, right? They know it's a DA reject, but they just took 72 hours out of your life that you can never get back. Or you get the ultimate penalty when you become a victim of contempt of cop, and that is they kill you. Yeah. And when officers use deadly force as a first resort rather than a last resort, like we're trained and taught, well, then there's only one version, and that's the one that they tell. That's and right. So what I want folks to know is, I need you to survive that police encounter. I need you to go home. I need you to have someone put pen to paper, create a paper trail, because police departments understand writing. And when you do that, you will get their attention, not a telephone call. You need to write a letter, and you need to complain in writing. And when you do so, do that with the understanding that you may not benefit from this, because every police chief was once a police officer. And it's my belief that the majority of them want to shelter and coddle police officers and protect the organism, the police department. But it's important to create a paper trail so that when something happens that makes national news, you can't legitimately, as a police chief, clutch your pearls and act like, I didn't know this officer was doing this kind of stuff. Right. Because there's no record of it. And we know that having a record, even then, doesn't always accomplish what we want. Because what did we see in Derek Chauvin? 27 personnel complaints, allegedly. How do you rack up personnel complaints like they're gifts from a good friend and have your police chief, Medrano, who's gone now, who was there, grew up on that department, know all of this and not get him out of the field?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because in certain departments, those complaints are signs of detectives doing the job the way certain supervisors think they should be doing the job. And so when they get complaints and they're in rougher neighborhoods, they make excuses for themselves, but their supervisors are making excuses for them also. And I unfortunately have seen, you know, the police documentation that the public never sees under deliberative process, where all of those things are made perfectly clear. It's not necessarily that they don't know that these officers are playing it, you know, way too close to the vest and knocking people around and doing all these things. It's that they excuse that as part of the job. And it is not part of the job. Citizens, in the Black community, we don't feel it, but part of what a police officer is supposed to do is respect the citizens whom they're patrolling and supposed to be keeping safe.
Absolutely. And you know, it's such a a systemic problem on these 18,000 police departments. And so there's not one thing that's going to right this ship. It's going to be a multifaceted approach, but we need to roll up our sleeves. We need to get involved and get engaged. We need to get on these police departments. I say all the time, and I know some of the young folks go crazy because they're all about FTP. I get it. That's what they want us to do, because we know from DOJ reports over almost 2 decades now that KKK and neo-Nazis, white supremacists, are infiltrating police departments. So you know what? We need to infiltrate too. And I know that it's difficult because I've had many young people reach out to me who are trying to get on police departments, and you know, they do everything but ask you how many bubbles are in a bar of soap. But right. You got to try, because it would be nice if there had been someone who looks like me, thinks like me, talks like me outside of a Tatiana Jefferson's home at 1 o'clock in the morning when Erin Dean decided to shoot in there as she played a video game with her nephew. Someone like me who could have said, dude, put your gun up. What are you doing? Or someone like me next to Derek Chauvin, who could have pulled him off of George Floyd. And so it's imperative that we get on these police departments. And listen, I'm not naive, I'm a realist, and I understand that police chiefs don't have an appetite to recruit us. And so we've got to do the heavy lifting ourselves. We can't sit around and wait on folks to make things right for us. We've got to get involved and get engaged if we really want to bring about true change. And listen, understand that every police chief serves at the pleasure of an elected mayor. Prosecutors are elected officials, and so we also have to vote. We have to get on these juries, and we got to be in the jury box when you have an opportunity to deliberate on a Derek Chauvin or a Kim Potter or whatever other name is coming down the pike, because there will be another, sadly.
Now, in your experience, and I definitely want to get to some action items after we do our scenarios, but I'm interested in one of the things that you said, because you said that certain police chiefs don't have an appetite for having more of us on their police forces. In your experience, by virtue of race, is the officer more likely to treat the members of our communities better? Because that's not necessarily my experience.
No, not necessarily. And I say all the time, really truthfully, you know, when you see these uses of force that are unnecessary, I could take race out of the equation. It's an officer who's drunk with power. It's somebody who's been allowed to offend again and again and not have any consequence. There's no deterrence to the bad behavior. And so we know that folks who look like me can engage in foolishness. We saw that with Freddie Gray, right? We saw that with Eric Garner. There was a Black female sergeant, albeit, you know, they say she was just a sergeant for a week or two. I don't care. She was a full-grown sergeant. She was a full-grown police officer. I don't care if you have 1 day, 1 minute, or 10 years on the department. We all took an oath, and we all have a duty to report, a duty to intervene. All of this stuff that they're talking about doing now under the George Floyd Justice and Reform Act is a disservice to that man's legacy. All of these things already existed. And if they were to even take effect, like no-knock warrants, they're talking about federal no-knock warrants. And Monique, you know that most no-knock warrants are not federal. Those are state and local officials who are serving those warrants. We saw that with Breonna Taylor. And so a lot of what we're hearing from our elected officials is really double talk, code speak, and they're being very intellectually dishonest with us.
I agree. Okay, so let's do let's try to get to 3 scenarios, because I think these are the ones that people deal with most often. I am stopped on foot in public by law enforcement. It's a on foot encounter with law enforcement, and I'm unaware at the time of any reason why I would be stopped. I'm standing to the side on the corner, minding my own business, you know, or walking, minding my own business. I haven't jaywalked. I'm not running from the scene of a crime. Nothing like that is going on. At the point that they tell me that they approach and start talking to me, do I have the right to remain silent?
When an officer asks you for information, your name, you know, like they like to do us, where are you going? As if I don't have, you know, the right to roam about this country freely, answer the questions. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to get into a pissing contest with a police officer. You don't want to spark their competitive spirit, if you will. At the end of the day, you're going to do whatever it is that officer has just told you to do, whether it's right or wrong. It's just a matter of how you're going to do it, right? And whether or not you're going to do it behind medical treatment because you didn't do it initially.
So here's, and we're right off the bat, and that's why I asked you that question first, because this is our first distinction, right? Because the fact of the matter is, legally, I have the right to remain silent. And legally, other than asking for my name, which is in certain states, I'm supposed to answer that, but any other information, where I just came from, where I'm going, where I live, that's supposed to be none of their damn business, because unless they have a reason to be asking me it that's backed up with some articulable suspicion that they can back up, or some probable cause, then that's supposed to be my autonomy as a citizen. But what you're saying is, whether I have the right to remain silent at that point or not, if what they're asking me is basics like my name, where you headed, it's in my best interest, if I want to stay alive and I want to go home, to answer.
Yeah, because the other thing is that sometimes police officers may have been given information that a person is not aware of. You know, we may have been given some information on a radio call while we're en route, and the information may or may not be correct. I mean, the onus is on us to determine once we get on scene. And, you know, if you're a good police officer, you should know that. But nonetheless, an officer may have some information that you don't know about. And while it may seem off-putting, you may think you're being racially profiled, and you could be. Again, bottom line, survive the encounter. What's the goal? Go home, walk away. And I really encourage people to let a police officer act a fool if that's what he wants to do. There is no shame, there is no harm, there is no dishonor in living. Okay. Let that officer do what he's going to do, and then get you a good attorney and handle it outside of that particular encounter.
Okay, so I say, my name is Monique Pressley, and I'm coming from the 6th of none of your damn business, and I'm headed to you better not follow me. And then they say to me that they're gonna pat me down for safety. And they start all over me like they're looking for lost gold. Are they supposed to be able to do that?
Not without an articulable reason. What have I done? What do you think I've done? What have I done that would give you the right to do that? And so all of that, again, may be problematic. All of it may be dead ass wrong. But remember, our goal is to go home. Because the moment you start telling an errant police officer like a Derek Chauvin, who's got a chip on his shoulder, who's got something to prove, who thinks he's a Billy Badass, that's how I like to refer to them, or who's an elephant hunter, you know, the guys who are out there looking to put people in jail, right or wrong, doesn't matter, because remember that whole DA reject thing, we'll deal with that later. I don't really know why I stopped you. I'll figure it out by the time I get to the police station. I'll figure it out by the time I write this report. I'll figure it out by the time I talk to the watch commander and tell him why I'm bringing you in here and why I'm booking you on this BS probable cause. But the damage is done.
Yeah. So they pat me down. They don't find anything. But I had a backpack, and my backpack is sitting right by me. And they say, do you mind if I search your backpack? Do I say no because I mind and I know that they don't have a warrant to search my backpack?
You can. And you run the risk of finding that errant officer who now wants to teach you. Right? Because a lot of what we see when we see uses of force, in my opinion, it's really about punishment. It's seldom about compliance. It's seldom about trying to effect a lawful arrest. It's, you didn't do what I said. And listen, we've got plenty of examples. Eric Garner. I mean, he wouldn't turn around and submit to being handcuffed. He's no longer with us. Sandra Bland, she felt some kind of way because the officer was basically trying to push her buttons by, in the midst of a traffic stop that was already over and done. All she needed to do was sign the ticket. And before he would give it to her, he says, well, you seem like you a little bothered. Well, get out there, right, I'm bothered. And here's why. And then he says, put the cigarette out. Why? Because he knew what he was about to do, which was put hands on her. And so you just want to comply. You want to comply. You want to let the officer do whatever he's going to do because he's going to do it. And then you take the next steps whatever policies and procedures and protocols are available to you, but you need to survive in the moment.
Okay, so again, I just want to point out, you're listening to a person with decades of experience in law enforcement who is now an expert commentator, and I'm saying that I know as a lawyer that if they don't have a right to or a reason to search my book bag, I should be able to tell them no when they ask me if I mind. That's my right. So now you know your rights. But what she is saying on the stay alive portion of this segment is you're gonna do it anyway. And what I suggest, I don't know if you agree, Sergeant Dorsey, I say, no, I do mind. I mind you doing it, but you're gonna do what you're gonna do, because I want it to be on record, especially if there's a body cam or if anybody's paying attention, that I didn't agree to them searching my backpack, or I didn't agree to them searching my purse. We're not on cars yet. And then they're gonna do it. So here's my twist. What if when I get stopped, I know that either on my person or in my possessions is a weapon? Do I tell them immediately?
That's a tough call. Are you feeling lucky?
That's why you're here, Sergeant Dorsey.
Listen, I mean, do you roll the dice and, if you're a female, do you bat your eyes and, do you do all and say all the right things in order to get this officer to continue on about his business? Or do you follow that sixth sense that tells you this is about to go left and I want to be proactive and get ahead of it? And again, everything that I suggest is no guarantee that it's going to end the way that we want it to end. But the bottom line is, if you challenge an officer's authority, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get that one person who is going to want to make an example of you, who's going to want to punish you for not doing whatever that thing is that they want to do. And so you need to do it and need to get you a Monique Pressley on retainer. And then you go ahead and get that paycheck. You go ahead and hit that lottery for that police department, because they don't mind paying. They've already shown us they'll kill us, they'll beat us, and they will give us taxpayer money at the end of that death or at the end of that unnecessary use of force. But wouldn't it be nice if you as the individual were the beneficiary of whatever that financial gain is going to be?
That's right. Instead of your mama, instead of your children, for you to still be with them, even though, just for free, I'll say us alive is not worth the same amount as us dead. I mean, that's the way that goes. They don't pay for our civil rights abuses when we actually live to tell about them, the same way they pay for them when they kill us. Okay. So even if I've got a weapon on me, it's kind of the luck of the draw, and I suggest they're like, for real, hands up. When they say, can I search you? I'll be turning around like this, like, yep, and there's a knife in my back pocket. At the minute, because I know if they ask them to search me, they about to search me. But let's say we're in a car. We're pulled over in a car, and we're the passenger in the car. Let's say we're the passenger in the car, and at the time that we pull over, the car is one puff smoke of weed. And we're the passenger in the car. We ain't doing nothing. We ain't got nothing. Are we, once stopped, free to leave on foot?
You would have to ask the officers that are detaining you if you're free to go. Hey, listen, I'm not driving the car. I don't have nothing to do with it. But again, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you don't know if you're gonna cause one of those officers to say, well, why do they want to leave? Well, what's going on with them? Because, by nature, we are suspicious, right? And so I might want to talk to the passenger. Maybe you're trying to deflect from the driver. Maybe you've got something on you that the driver knows they can't have. Maybe it's a gun because the driver's a felon and they can't carry a gun. So you holding a gun and you want to walk away with it. An officer might not allow you to do that. And so at the end of the day, you always have to fall back to kind of common sense. And right, if sense were common, everybody would have it. You need to be able to read the room. You need to be able to understand those red flags when an officer starts waving them at you, when you see that an officer is getting amped up, when an officer is getting smart with you, when they're getting a little mouthy, when they start, most times officers will walk up with their hand on their gun, but when you see them start pulling out pepper spray and grabbing their batons, they're telegraphing to you. When you see an officer put on his black leather gloves, I'm here to tell you, they're about to put hands on you. We don't do any surgery out there. There's really no reason for an officer to start putting on black leather gloves. And you've seen plenty of videos, as have I. And once that happens, then they get to putting in work. And so when you see an officer putting on gloves as you're trying your best to answer all of their questions, that's the time to be quiet. And someone had asked, what can they do? Who can they call? You can always ask for a supervisor. Always, always ask for a supervisor. Ask them to have the sergeant respond, and they may say no, but you've asked. And now we know that there are lots of recordings that officers create an audio record when they say, stop pushing, stop biting, stop fighting, stop resisting, and you're not, right? So you need to create an audio record. I'd like to speak to a supervisor. What is your supervisor's name? Who's the watch commander on duty today, sir or ma'am? So that you have this information. You don't have to antagonize an officer by asking them for their badge number. It's on their uniform. You don't have to antagonize an officer by asking them for their name. It's on their uniform. They have identifying numbers on their vehicle. So you don't have to let them know, tip your hand that a personnel complaint is coming because I need you to get home.
Yeah. So when people are pulled over, do you suggest that they, as they're being pulled over, try to, if they're by themselves, get somebody on the phone and like let it be known to the officer that somebody is listening in? You
can or not. There's no, guarantee. If you want to create a record for yourself, call a loved one and just let them listen in to what's happening. Don't telegraph it to the officer because sometimes it's better. People don't always need to know what you know, right? It's better to just do that and then just let it play itself out because, again, you might antagonize a Billy Badass and now you might make him say, like we saw with Sandra Bland, she was recording him. He got her out the car. He took her out of the view of his car video and then we could only hear what was going on. And so you don't want to necessarily, in my opinion, tip your hand. Call somebody as you're being pulled over. Hey, mom, dad, uncle, cousin, I'm getting stopped. I'm at A and B. I'm the intersection of A and B, whatever your location is. And then if they're within close proximity and can get to you, please come. I've had my own children. Listen, I'm a cop and their dad is a cop. I've had my own sons call, and say, hey, mom, the police are pulling me over. And you know what I do? I get in my car and go.
Yep.
That's what I do.
Yep, absolutely. And in the way you think that you explained it, it makes so much sense because if they are wearing a body cam and that's not preventing behavior, then why do I think that them seeing I got mama and them on FaceTime is going to prevent behavior? Not necessarily so. Okay, so if you are the driver in the car, we hear so many conflicting reports, like best case scenarios. Hands were visible on your steering wheel. Is that yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. When the officer is talking to me, am I eyeballing the officers? Am I giving direct eye contact? Am I responding?
Yes, because, if you can, what you really want to do is you want to put the officer at ease. Now, listen, should we have to do that? No. Do folks who don't look like us do that? No. But I want you to get home. And so whatever you need to do, hey, officer, listen, I get stopped. Why? Because I wear this suit. They don't know who I am until they stop me. And, I say everything, I speak the lingo. So once I start speaking, they understand. And then, of course, I show them my identification. So then everything changes once they see who I am. Sometimes, not all the time. But you want to put the officer at ease. Hey, I'm not a threat. What do you want me to do, officer? If an officer says, I would feel better, sir, if you stepped out of your car, officer, please allow me to get out of my car. Do whatever you need to do to get them to hurry along. If they go write you a ticket, don't ask them no questions. Everything you need to know is going to be on that ticket. You want to get away from them as quickly as possible. You want to end that encounter as quickly as you can. And so allow that officer to do whatever it is that he's doing, because he's going to do it anyway. And he may do it after he's used force on you.
So when they say to me, you know, that they want my license and registration, which for me, if I get stopped, I reach and get it before I'm ever stopped, because I don't want to have to reach for anything once I've been stopped. But if I'm pulled over first and they tell me to get it, am I saying out loud, like, I'm using my right hand, my registration is in my glove box, or my registration is under my seat? Because at that point, I got to reach somewhere and they can claim they don't know what I'm reaching for.
Right. And so again, you want to be proactive as best you can. And, you know, there are some people who keep their identification and their car registration and their in proof of insurance all together in a certain spot. In the event, it's a shame we got to do it, but we got to do it. You do get stopped. So you're not reaching and fumbling around. And I do the same thing when you know when you're about to get pulled over, right? Because they get behind us for a block or two, right? Before they hit the lights. So you already know. Have your identification when they come to your window. If it's nighttime, you can turn on your interior lights, your dome lights, so that they can see you. They're already going to light up your car. You know, if you've got tinted windows, roll all your windows down so can't nobody pretend like I couldn't see, or I saw furtive movement and that caused me to fear for my life. And but for that, I would not have fired 15 rounds, right? And so you want to do whatever you have to do to make that officer feel comfortable.
If you're in your vehicle and they ask for your license and registration and you're riding dirty and you have an expired license and you don't have registration, what do you do?
Well, again, you know, some people will say nothing. I've had I've had many people who I've stopped who were riding dirty, you know, and gave me a false name back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I was out there on patrol. We'd have to take you back to the station and get you fingerprinted and then wait for the fingerprints to come back to find out who you are. And they'd be like, Dorsey, I know I said my name was John Smith, but I just wanted to see if you would go figure it out. You got me, right? You got me. So there are those folks. I've had folks run from me because I talk about all the time, you know, you can't shoot somebody in the back like Walter Scott because they run, or you don't have the physical agility to catch them. Somebody run from you, a police officer really only has two choices: get ready to get some exercise or let them go. What the hell? But we got officers who are so quick to want to shoot you and kill you and then say that you posed a threat, or I thought it was my taser. Ooh-wee, my bad. You know, Dante Wright is not the first young man to lose his life. Eric Harris in Oklahoma lost his life because a pay-for-play deputy pulled out a taser, pulled out his gun thinking it was a taser. And so it's just so important. It's so important that you survive the encounter and let that officer do what he's going to do, because he's going to do it anyway.
So if I have any semblance of a license, even if I know that the license is expired, hand over whatever it is I have and understand that it's now more likely that I am ending this exchange getting arrested, but it's really, unfortunately, up to me whether I end up assaulted, battered, shot.
And you know, there are decent officers out there, so I don't want to broad brush every officer and say that they're all jackasses, because they're not. You may encounter an officer who can empathize with your situation, who has a little compassion, who appreciates your honesty and your forthrightness, if that's a word, in saying, you know, officer, look, you know, everybody's on hard times now. You know, this is not unique to any one demographic anymore. I've been unemployed. You know, I'm going through a tough time at the house. You know, I just had an argument with my guy or my girl, and I just needed to get away. And I know I may have straddled the line and crossed over. I haven't been drinking, but I'm just not in a good headspace right now. Can you show me a little mercy? Again, there is no harm in my mind in asking for what you want. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. I tell my sons all the time, now they won't do it, but I tell them, shoot, you better play that mommy card. You better let them know whose child you are.
They
My kids will
absolutely.
say, no, I don't want to, I didn't. But I'm like, well, that could be the difference between you coming home to me and you not.
Well, and it's so unfortunate, even in that, I've just seen so many times how our brothers, our Black men, um, just get disparate treatment, even from between the men and the women. Personal example, a couple of weeks ago, um, I thought that I had enough gas to pick up my son and get to my next son's school before I had to get gas again. And maybe I did, but because my mind was thinking about 15,000 other things, I picked them both up and kept going, like just on my way down the highway, like I was going home. My car is completely stopping. I have to pull over and I'm like, I just don't even believe this is happening. I do not believe that even after I knew that I needed to stop and get gas and I was where I was going to go and get the gas, I went through the whole thing in my mind and pulled over. So there's cars zooming by. Thankfully, we're someplace safe. But I'm like, if I call OnStar, it's going to take a million years. I'm at that point praying that a police officer will pass by, because then at least we can be straight and safe on the side of the highway with two kids. And thankfully, a DDOT person stopped. But before the DDOT person stopped, a police officer got there, and I'm like, I'm sure it's gas, officer. This is what happened. This is what happened. But here's the thing. He didn't ask for my driver's license. He didn't ask for my registration. He didn't even ask my name. He saw me in there just presenting like I'm presenting today with two kids, teens, and me saying, I don't have no gas. And his only priority was, I think there's a DDOT truck back there. They can come up here. They can give you the gas. I'm going to put some flares right here, and then you go on your way. Well, I could have been any kind of criminal. They don't know. My tags could have been expired. My driver's license could have been, and I know for sure. Black man, same scenario. Different vehicle, nicer or not as nice, might have gone through a completely different experience. I mean, they literally asked me for no identification, which they shouldn't have, because all I did was run out of gas. I hadn't committed any crime, but that's not the way it goes all the time.
Because what you did was probably disarming to the person, right? And so they kind of took a deep breath, because listen, I mean, we want to go home too. When I stop folks as a police officer, I don't know who I'm stopping. I know I want to go home to my 4 kids, as well. And so a lot of time it's all in how your delivery, how you talk to someone, right? And young people think, well, I know my rights, and he didn't have to stop me in the first place. But all that, goes out the window when you come off a certain way. Listen, I told you I have 4 sons, and I've got some that are tatted, from head to toe. And when you look at them, you think, you don't know who my kids are. You don't know they mine. Yeah. But you make a certain assumption. People do. It's the society that we live in. And is it right? No, but this is the hand we've been dealt. So we got to deal with it. And I can't tell you how many white folks have said to me when they meet me for one reason or another, oh my God, your son is, you know how they like to say, we so articulate. Your son, he was so nice. He was so mannerable. I had one son, I'll just share a real quick story. I had one son who needed a tire some years ago. And I was at work, and I was 40, 50 miles away from where he was, and I couldn't get to him, and he didn't have the funds to do it. And I told him, drive to the tire shop that we go to all the time, and let me talk to the manager. And I talked to the manager and told him, who I am. I will come to your shop as soon as I get off work. If you can just put this tire on my son's car. Well, he went in there looking, like, I can't even say who they might have thought he was, tatted up, baggy pants, not sagging, but big clothes, baseball jersey like the kids like to wear. And he gave my son a tire. Yeah. He allowed me to come in there, and he said to me how amazing my son was and how polite he was. It could have gone the other way. And I use that as a learning lesson, as a teaching moment for my son to say, if he'd have gone in there all crazy, man, I need a tire, and you go give me one, and why not? Yeah. He'd still be sitting there waiting on a tire, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about your presentation.
Presentation and delivery, even though, once again, shouldn't be, but that is where we are. And what the whole point of this is for us to stay alive. Okay, my last scenario, because I know I'm running over, but police are at the door. Okay, we're in our own self-house. Police are at the door, and they've maybe had a call, something suspicious, some loud noise, or maybe somebody has said something is going on in the house. Why don't I go ahead and give a real scenario? Samuel Celestin was killed a couple of years ago, death by taser, tased upward of 20 seconds, and then put in the prone position with a hobble in Florida. And it all started because he was having a medical crisis. He was diagnosed schizophrenic, and for the first time ever, he had turned violent with his family. And the mom and the sister ended up having to call 911. They got out of the house. They left him in the house. What they wanted was for him to be Baker acted. They wanted for there to be a response that could handle someone who was in the midst of a medical mental health crisis. And what they got was 2 cops joined by another one. And one of them sounded like he didn't even know what the Baker Act was. But these officers went to that door for this man who was schizophrenic and tripping the light fantastic. And he came to the door. When you see the video, I mean, it is so obvious. If nobody had told them nothing, it is so obvious. He opens the door and he's like, "Who are you? How do I know you police? Do you have your certification?" And they respond, "Yeah, I got it in my pocket." I mean, everything that would go against the way that you deal with somebody who you know is in a scenario. But what he does first is close the door. And when he comes back to the door, he comes back like with a remote in his hand. The officers claim they feel threatened. They push in the door. It's your worst case scenario that just unfolds and unfolds until he's down the street dead, basically. He tried to run away. They ran behind him. They tased him multiple times. Then they hobbled him. And they sat there shooting the stuff, talking about their arm, talking about when they get out of work while he died. Because in a minute, he was from breathing to not breathing. My question, it's a million things, but from the beginning, they didn't have a search warrant, but somebody had called. The family had called, and on the call had said that he had been violent with one of them. Did they have a right to enter the premises because of that call?
Yeah, so, people need to be very careful when you call the police, particularly if you have a family member who has mental health issues. And so, until they get it right, police get it right, I'm going to just say this: don't call them. Don't call them, because you don't know who's coming. And so if you gotta call somebody, you need to call every relative and say, "Get over here so we can just all sit on his ass until we can call a paramedic or let's throw him in the car. Let's tie him up ourselves and put him in the car and take him wherever it is that they need to go, because you don't know which officers are going to respond. And we've seen so many times when officers respond to a mental health situation and they don't handle it appropriately, and now this person is left to live with forevermore. I called the police looking for assistance and they killed my loved one. So I say be very, very careful. And let's just talk about another real quick scenario where officers show up because they think this is a drug house or they got information about something, and they come in there, with a warrant, without a warrant. You don't know who's coming into your home. On that one, you're just gonna have to pray, because I promise you, if somebody comes in my door in the middle of the night, early morning, I don't have any conversation for you. It's going to go down how it's going to go down. Yep. And so you need to know that. And you need to know when officers are involved in dynamic entries on a search warrant that they legitimately have. They're going to come in like gangbusters, like we've seen. And some, if not all, are going to, because those are the Billy Badass. Those are the guys that want to work those special units. They want to do those dynamic entries. And so it's very, very dangerous. But you do what you think is in your best interest in that moment, in the best interest of your family, in the best interest of your children who are in the home. Yeah. Survive the encounter.
Yep. I mean, and you brought tears to my eyes saying it, because I know it's unfortunate, but what you are saying is 100% true, because I just, this is a family with an organization I consult with. And when I was listening to the 911 call, it was heartbreaking. I mean, I felt my heart just drop full out of my body, because the operator asked, is this a medical emergency? Do you need a paramedic? Or do you need the police? The operator asked, and she said, we're fine. We are okay. We don't need medical treatment, because she translated that the operator was asking about her. And she said, what we really need, my aunt is in there sleeping. We need to get my brother out of the house. He's been Baker acted before. He's schizophrenic, blah, blah, blah. So the operator translated, wrote everything down, and sent the police. She had an opportunity, the sister did, to say, send medical. Yes, we have a medical emergency, because that's what it was. That's what it was, but it did not go down that way. And I fully agree with you. Unless everybody else in the house is in danger, I would say we would all be running out of the house and leaving him in there until we could figure out how to get him out, because I don't trust it. But okay, we're through our scenarios, and I am like 15 minutes over time. I do want to, before we end though, you've given so many action items, which I appreciate. But is there anything else that people need to know, like in terms of places they can go to be familiar with their rights? I can tell you ACLU.org has them listed there, but are there any other action items that people need just in order to be prepared for their encounters with the police?
I would encourage people to have a conversation with your local police department. Get to know them. There's going to be some bad doers on that department, but at the end of the day, you need the police need you. And so you want to have a relationship. You want to have a rapport with the officers who are in your area, because listen, when I'm out on patrol, I'm going to see you every day. If you cutting up, I'm going to see you. You live here, I work here. So we might as well figure out how to do this together. Right? And so get to know them. If you have a situation, call the watch commander. That's a lieutenant or sergeant on duty, and let them know that, I have a relative who just moved in with me and we've got some issues going on, and you may get calls from time to time. Please flag my residence, my address, my location, so that when you get a call, you understand, your officers know that they're coming here for this reason or for that reason. And know that when you call and ask for medical, like you just described, that if you say anything that sounds like violence is occurring, they're going to send the police with the paramedics. Paramedics are not armed, and they're not going to come there without reinforcements. And they, even in New York, with this whole, we're going to call medical professionals, the minute you articulate violence is occurring, guess who's coming? The police. So be very mindful of your words and follow your gut. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. If it feels like things are escalating, shut your mouth. Survive the encounter.
Yeah. Amen. I saw somebody in the comments who said something that is true. We need everybody in this country to hear the things that you have shared with us, because it is just, it's not maybe what we want to hear, but it's what we need to know. And so I really appreciate you guys. If you are not following Sergeant Dorsey, please follow, and you'll see her. You'll turn on the TV and she'll be there. You don't have to worry about that. But organizations, I know that she is available to be hired as a speaker, and this is who you want coming to your organization, to your town, to your state, to talk about these matters. You need somebody who actually knows what it's like on the ground and can tell you how to have an encounter with the police and stay alive. So just blessings to you. Thank you so much, Sergeant Dorsey, for all of your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right. And I hope you'll come back again, because we'll
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Be safe. Be well.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us again. As you just heard from Sergeant Dorsey, you got so much information. I hope that you will share it with those who are in your circle. I'm going to post this as soon as this is over. Just a couple hours will pass by. We'll edit it and we will post it. So please share it in your stories. Tag Sergeant Dorsey, tag me. But thank you for coming to Make It Make Sense. We're here Monday through Friday live at noon. And so please, please, please come and share this information. We'll be bringing you information like this daily. If you didn't see yesterday where we had Terrell Starr, who was live on the ground in Ukraine, please go back and look at that and share it as well. If you would like to support us, the link tree is in my bio. for different ways that you can support the work that we're doing. So I appreciate you. I will see you tomorrow live at noon right here. Take care.